Good evening. Hello. My name is Yudit, and I'm a speech therapist. And tonight we have Katarina, who's going to be telling us about the Bancroft programs. So, whenever you're ready, Katarina, I'm interested to hear more about it.
Yes, good evening, Judith, and good evening, everyone who is watching us and listening us. It's so good to be in a good company. I'm an educator, special educator, most recently, and currently I work at Bancroft Neurohealth, which is a huge organization and is a national leader and nonprofit in the area of autism and individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities. We serve anybody who is in need of neurological rehabilitation, and we have a complex of schools, but we provide also other services. I have been at Bancroft for 10 years, a little more than that.
Awesome. So, where exactly are you guys located?
So we have our schools in Mount Laurel, New Jersey, but we have several other locations within the New Jersey, but also in Pennsylvania.
How many schools are there?
So currently, actually, we just recently acquired a new school, which is really cool. But really, what is even more cool, and let me see if I can share my screen. Is there a way that I can share my screen by chance?
Yeah, through Zoom.
Yes. Oh, maybe I will need to probably figure it out. But anyway, definitely I can at least talk because Bancroft is literally recognized all over the United States. But also we have students and individuals that we serve also from outside of the United States. And actually, recently we just celebrated 140 years um, that we are in business. So we're kind of old, which I'm really proud of because not many businesses, especially in special education, are able to survive for such a long time.
Yeah,
So,
that is a very long time,
right.
especially with special education. That
Yeah.
hasn't been, it's kind of recently more uh, people are becoming more aware of special education and it's more widespread in all schools. And there's still schools that don't even have special education programs.
Yes, absolutely. I'm so glad that you're saying that. And you, as a speech therapist, you know that services that we provide individuals with intellectual disabilities or developmental disabilities are truly important.
Yeah, absolutely. And from a young age, as you were saying,
Yes,
as early as
absolutely.
early intervention.
Yeah, I almost feel that early intervention became like a cliche word that everybody's just throwing around. But if we have any viewers that have children with special needs, I'm sure they recognize how important it is to have that early service in place. And sometimes it's heartbreaking because as a parent, you're
Mhm.
still trying to figure out what's going on, what are we doing, is this really it? What's going to happen to us in the future. So with all those
Right.
life-changing situations, you still have to think like, okay, now is the time. Let's get started with early services.
Yeah, and I think a lot of parents just don't even know that there's that option or that that's what needs to be done. Some kind of just wait um, because they're not educated on what the options are.
Yes. Oh, yeah, absolutely. So actually, I'm glad that you're mentioning that because, for example, I know that here we at Bancroft, we try to concentrate on providing complex services on so many different levels. So speech therapy is, for example, one of the services that is needed for individuals with autism or with special needs. But there are so many other services that if they're not available when needed, it's really hard to develop a person as a whole, right? Because that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to provide services best we can to basically elevate lives of individuals we serve. So in addition to
Hmm.
speech therapy, it would be occupational therapy, it would be physical therapy, it would be applied behavior analysis, which is something that I specialize in as well, in addition to actual individualized educational program and many other services.
Yeah, it's definitely important to have all of those different parts of the team. And if they're all working under one company, they can collaborate and work together. Do you guys collaborate at Bancroft, like have co-sessions or have the occupational therapist and speech therapist share notes or discuss progress?
Yes, so I'm so glad actually you're asking about this. And I know for sure that parents who are watching us do have experience, positive or negative, with this kind of collaboration. So, yeah, it's proven that the best way to move forward is to have collaboration of all services in one. So, usually, at least here at Bancroft, we do have meetings where we meet as a whole clinical team so we can develop whatever is needed for a student in very specific area. So give you an example, for example, very recently we started to focus more on vocational services for our students. So if we have, let's say, a delivery of items among classrooms, there is one specific student who would be taking this job of delivering items to individual classrooms. But there is so much that goes into the whole process. So speech therapists would propose which kind of new buttons would need to be displayed on AAC device for that student. So when he goes into a specific classroom, he has to ask like, which size would you prefer? Or would you like me to leave it at the door? So that would be that would be speech therapists. Occupational therapists would determine if it's safe for the student to try to open the door and display more independence. Applied behavior therapists would determine if it's okay for the student to actually go inside of the classroom because maybe function of his behavior is access to attention, and maybe something else would need to be modified in his environment. So this is just one of the examples that amazingly illustrates how complex a specific simple task can be and how beneficial it is for us to collaborate.
Yeah, absolutely. What ages do you guys serve from?
So at Bancroft, actually, very recently, we opened new early intervention programs, but we serve our individuals from that early intervention up to the adulthood and beyond.
So
So
also for adults.
mhm. We do have also adult services, which we are truly proud of as well.
And in what form do you have the adult services? How does that look? Because obviously they don't go to school. Uh,
Yes, that's very true. So for our students who they usually live in the group homes, they participate in supported environments, in supported classes, or even sometimes it could be even supported employment, if possible. But
mhm.
when you ask about collaboration, here is another a cool example. We do collaborate with adult services because they would compose for us a list of essential skills that they feel their individuals need in order to be successful in adulthood. And then we
Mhm.
take this list and transform it into more specific goals for our students.
Awesome. And then how does the early intervention program look like?
So usually we engage in many different assessments, and I feel like usually that's a good first step um, to any service. Sometimes we do experience difficulties because we need to figure out what kind of assessment would be best to address needs for individual students. And sometimes when we discuss this with our teachers at Bancroft, usually it's a comparison with a doctor. When I go to a doctor, usually they don't try to figure out what kind of assessment to administer. Instead of that, they're trying to figure out what would elevate my life, and based on that, they try to choose assessment that would most or best address what they need answers, what kind of questions need to be answered. So we start with the assessments after we figure out what are potential goals that students could be exposed to. Then we figure out plans that are educational, behavioral, and address every other aspect of their lives. So this is the beginning with early intervention.
I remember working in the elementary school where we had preschool and kindergarten as well. And it was always the evaluation that was kind of the most important part, where you would decide if this kid needed to be taken and seen for services, or if they were just showing normal developmental processes. But I also remember doing the evaluation for a 3-year-old or a 4-year-old that is still so little and attached
Yes.
to their parents. It was always kind of a game of figuring out, how am I going to get this child to sit and talk to a stranger for an hour and play with toys. So I remember always having like 10 different sets of games backed up, prepared just in case, while at the same time trying to do the standardized assessment to get the data. But the assessment process is definitely a crucial role. So you guys do the assessment, and then you provide therapy based on what you find.
So, Judy, I'm so glad that you're actually mentioning it. And I wonder if our listeners or our viewers actually have any experience with this, because usually, like when we have a dilemma, what kind of assessment to implement. I'm not sure what's your experience, but for us, it's usually, I do not know individual enough to determine if his or her response would be categorized this way or that way. And what is fascinating to me, that usually evaluation by a professional is comparable to an assessment that is parent reported.
Definitely.
And, right? So I just would like to empower every parent out there that you know your child the best, and usually your data is so valuable for us. So thank you in advance, and thank you for any past assessment you've done for us.
Yeah, absolutely. I found that when the parents are able to provide very detailed reports, especially at the younger stages when the difference between months is so big. So like a 12-month-old versus 18 months versus 2 years old. And when the parents are able to provide specific milestones at each month, it's very helpful to assess where they're meeting the developmental norms, where they are delayed. And especially when working with a nonverbal child, their parent knows them better than anyone, and they're able to communicate with them in their own way.
And actually, if we have any researchers or any students of special needs among our listeners and viewers, I just would like to say that, for example, even very recently, there is a comparison of different assessments, hopefully in print very soon. It has been done by researchers by Rebecca Netson and Cole. Andrei Vyshetsky was actually one of the lead investigators. And this group, of course, I have to say that, and the group of investigators also found that parent reports results are completely comparable to rating scales like CARS 2 that is done by professionals.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that in order to provide a good full evaluation, you take the standardized assessment that you do, whichever one that is fitting, the parent report, and then also an informal subjective
Yeah.
report is also so important, just observation and things that you notice and see upon interacting with the student, which it's obviously you can't put that into numbers and percentages, but it's important to use together with all the other information.
Yes, you're so right. Yeah.
um, I wanted to ask you kind of more about you and what your background is. How did you get into special education initially? What led you to that profession?
Yes. So, in case that it's not that noticeable, based on my accent, I wasn't born in the United States. So I'm from Slovakia, or former Czechoslovakia, and I was teacher over there in elementary education with specialization in mathematics. So I came here with that qualification. So I taught mathematics at the Benjamin Banneker Preparatory Charter School, a phenomenal school for standard population.
Mhm.
Um, and then I came to Bancroft and became a special educator. And honestly, the whole field just grabbed me, and I never stopped thinking about it. And I am an avid advocate of special education, and I just hope that we can provide better and better services every day and every year forward.
You're someone that worked in standard education and special education. So what kind of made you make the switch, or what differences do you see? Um, I assume you prefer special education since you've been working in this field for so many years since. But for anyone
Yes,
that's
that's
maybe trying to decide between which type of education to go into, who's experienced both, how do you decide?
yeah, that's going to be a hard question. Oh my goodness, I've never got a question like this. This is a hard. So I think education in general is rewarding. It's really complex field because you work with stakeholders on all possible levels. And I'm sure you know, because you work not only with the individuals, with the students, for example, you work with colleagues, with different fields, with the parents, and many times even with the families of the parents. So that is really,
Yeah.
really interesting phenomenon that is not replicable in other professions. But really, what is interesting about this whole field, and probably you will agree with me, is development of technology in most recent years. For example, one of the things that we're trialing now at Bancroft are haptic devices. Basically, any smartwatch or any wearable is considered to be haptic device because what it provides is the multitude of stimuli that are telling me something. So if I would have visual schedule just on a piece of paper, it just visual stimuli that's going to tell me go and pick up your lunch. If it's on my wearable, right, on my smartwatch, on my haptic device, I get a little chime, so it's auditory stimulus. I get also visual
Mhm.
stimulus. So um, there's a lot of different stimuli that help students with disabilities to actually be notified of something to do. Hence, visual schedule. But
Yeah, wow.
so wow, indeed, because when I'm
I've
thinking
never
about
heard of the watch as a
yes,
prompt. That's
yes.
gonna be amazing to use.
So it actually has so many good advantages because when so I'm not sure what is your experience. Many of our students do have many auditory and processing issues that usually prevent them from experiencing life and everyday experiences the way we do. And we kind of take it for granted. So if I have a prompt on my watch, it's just hitting me through all my senses. So I'm getting that information via all different inputs, not only auditory, not only visual, but all together. And it seems to be really working for some of our students.
Wow.
I, I really wonder if any of our listeners and viewers actually have any experiences with haptic devices. Oh yes, there is one more thing. So imagine if you go on a community-based instruction with your students and they're just wearing their watches. It looks so natural and they look like
Yeah.
typical teenagers. And that's like just additional advantage even for parents to see like, oh my goodness, I have a teenager and this is going to be okay. We're going to be fine.
Yeah. I've never heard of the watches. Is this something that you guys are researching and developing it and are planning to uh, put it public, sell it? Because
So
I haven't
definitely
seen it yet. Yeah.
Definitely, we'll be thinking of something like this. Right now, we're literally just in a pioneering stage. We do
Hmm.
have other different programs that are being developed at Bancroft. This is literally just one of them, and I'm just talking about it because I'm personally involved with that. But yes, it's truly amazing.
Very cool. I'm excited to hopefully use that in the future and get to see students using that. Uh, because it's a when I worked at the elementary school, we had a separate classroom where many
Okay.
students had their own one-on-one paraprofessional ABA therapist that was with them all day to manage behaviors and help navigate the day. And they're kind of just sitting with them all day. So I think that something like that watch could kind of make it less dependent on a person having to sit there and give them the same prompts, like whatever the prompt may be, to redirect their attention, um, or anything else that they're usually prompted on. So definitely something that will be beneficial to the students and the teacher. I think the general classroom too. It could.
Yes, you're absolutely right. So when we talk about the idea of prompting, usually many of our students eventually become prompt dependent, and it's
Yeah.
literally just because we weren't able to teach them to do things the proper way. And sometimes it's also confusion because sometimes our students they crave attention and basic human relationships. And if this is the only way to get that, then yes, I want to be prompt dependent because then somebody is talking to me and I like that. So that's unfortunate. The fortunate thing about this is that if I know that there's a lot of prompting from another person, teacher or anybody else, I can transfer that prompt dependency to something as a device or visual schedule, because then student is gaining more autonomy. There's better decision maker. The students actually feeling that now I have control over my environment. There's so many benefits to move that from dependency to something, for example, visual schedule or a haptic device, that is really amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. Is there any other research that the Bancroft School is involved in? I don't know if that's a very big question, but if there is anything else that uh, you are developing there.
Yes. So one of the programs that we're developing currently is a severe behavioral intervention program, where students usually come only for a day program, and usually those students have complex behavioral needs. So we have a team of highly specialized professionals in applied behavior analysis and relevant fields who are able to, again, assess the student and develop behavior plan. Um, I'm really hoping it's going to be a successful program because even for outside providers and for families of many of individuals, it's truly hard not only to find appropriate services, but also to make the decision between should I take my child to a day program or should I look at more complex help? And in that case, it would be overnight program. So those are hard decisions that parents have to make. And we're hoping that this severe day behavior program is going to help bridge that need to make those hard decisions, either or.
And I don't know if you already mentioned this. I'm sorry if you did, but what are the different ranges of a function or like the different programs that you guys have? So you're mentioning the severe day program, and what other kind of programs do you guys have based on functioning?
Yes. So yes, actually, we didn't go through that a lot. So we offer our children's services, which is basically the school, Bancroft. In addition, we offer also adult services. Those are our students that eventually age out and go in after they are 21 years old,
Hmm.
into group homes and supported living. We do have neuro rehab. Actually, I didn't mention this one yet because we also serve individuals with brain injury. So our professionals would concentrate on neuroplasticity and
Hmm.
and serve populations in those areas.
Wow,
Oh,
so everything.
Yes. Oh, one thing I didn't mention, in our new school that we just moved, we have a new school on 80 acres here in New Jersey. And part of our program is also a swimming pool, uh,
Wow.
which is amazing. And our kids love it a lot, of course. So it's really interesting to see them in those new environments. I don't have exactly data here, but danger of drowning in among individuals with special needs is truly high.
I didn't
So
know
we're
that.
right. I didn't know that either. Um, so that's a research, and I wish I could actually cite some data. Right now, I can't. But what we're trying to do in our programs basically is to develop curriculum that would support our students in terms of exposure to water and being just able to navigate those environments. The kids love it. It's
Yeah,
amazing.
definitely for the super sensitive children with sensory issues. Water can be something that's a challenge.
Mhm. And something that probably professionals in your area will appreciate, we do concentrate on assistive technology. Um,
Mhm.
what is what is your experience like? How the public is receptive to different assistive technologies?
So at this, when I worked at the elementary school, I had several students that had AAC devices, and it was kind of my responsibility to program their devices and train their staff, their teachers, and their paraprofessionals on how to use them, which is obvious that it would be us to teach, but it kind of in the typical day, there's sessions, those so I always felt like there was a need for actually an AAC specialist in addition to a speech therapist, because I think that there's really so much to the AAC devices, and you really want to know somebody that's going to make it the most easy and accessible to the student. And I personally felt like I needed more experience and more education and like just knowledge on how to program these devices based on each student, because every student is different. Some students prefer bigger buttons, smaller buttons. Some prefer their some like cars, some like songs. So I ended up spending hours at home playing around trying to program these devices, which eventually I know I would have gotten better, but there's only so much you can do in addition to all of the evaluations, IEP meetings, the
Yes.
actual therapy sessions, planning. So I think that the need for a AAC specialist is important. I don't think that a speech therapist in a school can manage all of that and truly provide the best program device for the student. So I don't know if you guys have AAC specialists or speech therapists that specialize in just AAC, but I definitely found that to be important.
So yes, I'm so glad you're saying this. And again, like I wonder what is the experience of our viewers and listeners, because literally even that acceptance of AAC device is on the spectrum among larger populations, and of course everybody wants the best for individuals with needs. It just for everybody it looks a little bit different. And the way actually I like to look at it is to use AAC device is just like an additional language that somebody learns. Like
Mm-hmm.
if I'm acquiring this AAC device that I can actually use because it's going to assist me with speech, it doesn't mean that I'm losing my language. I'm just
Yeah.
learning another language. And I'm just hoping that parents and their families will recognize this is what it is. So it's not like either or. I never stopped speaking Slovak just because I acquired another language.
Right. That's a good analogy to the show. Yeah, I had some students that were verbal and they were using it kind of just to supplement their speech. So it was hard to introduce this to the parents. The parents didn't understand why they needed a device when they
Mhm.
were able to talk, but it was kind of to explain for some particular students, just showing them what options there are to say in a situation is what they need. Just to give them the choice visually. Oh, I can
Yes,
say, oh, I can say, how are you? I can say, I need to go to the bathroom.
yes,
Um,
absolutely. Oh,
so
oh,
there's
here's
kind
another
of a
one.
stigma, yeah.
You're right. And here's another one. So additional language could be language that is expressed through our hands and through our gestures. That's an additional language that even we use. We don't have to. I'm fully verbal. I shouldn't be needing to use any other language. And still, I'm using my hands for emphasis. Still, we're using our facial expression as an additional language tool. So it's good to recognize for our parents that if a child has an AAC device, let's find opportunities to use it. That is an additional language that he's learning, just like we're using at least two languages, my spoken language and then my gestures, my mimical expressions.
Yeah, and I think that parent education with this is very important and teaching the parents how to carry over at home. Because I definitely had some students that they would come back after the weekend and they had their device, and I would open it and it was just YouTube videos and
Yeah,
games. And it's
yeah,
really important to emphasize that it's it's their words, it's their language, it's not a toy, it's not TV, it's only to be used and to be looked at. And I actually often recommend it for them if they want a tablet, it needs to be a separate device. It can't be the same one.
So I am so glad you're saying this because yes, we do have that problem as well. Literally, that device that is used just for communication should not be used for anything else if we can afford it. And
Yeah.
honestly, like sometimes we get questions, "Whoa, but he doesn't like anything else but watching Elmo on YouTube. So what do you want me to do with that?" So it's like, yes, but if our students are diagnosed with autism, it means that part of the diagnosis is that rigidity. So what we take for granted that I'm just going to explore a new toy, a new game. For them, it's going to be something that they need to learn, and I have to
Yeah.
teach it.
I would make sure that that student had an Elmo page on their AAC device with all of
Yeah,
the
you're so
Elmo
professional.
characters.
I like that. That's funny. Yeah, you're right. You're right.
Yeah,
So actually, I have here a page from Bancroft that just to kind of show our environment. Is it okay if I share my screen?
absolutely. Yes.
Okay. So give me 1 second. All right. So honestly, this is just a general Bancroft page if anybody wants to learn about us more. But and actually everything that we have here, all the pictures, literally like some of the students, like I spoke with them just last week.
Mm-hmm.
So what you see on the picture here, those are pictures from our vocational opportunities within day programs. And then also we provide opportunities for our students to actually operate Square app, which is basically the way to make purchases. And here are some of the programs that I was just talking about. So we do have, we call it Linden's Neurohealth, which is a behaviorally complex service that we offer our students. Severe Behavior Day program, which is the one that we just discussed. Assistive technology, it's a huge component of our services. And we also offer adult services. Our students actually work also in our greenhouse, which is
That's awesome.
Here, this is our music studio where our students engage in different activities related to music, but we also offer ASL language in accordance with the music. So usually they would sign the words of a specific song instead of saying it verbally. And the last thing I was going to show you, and actually I'm going to switch here. So this is our
it's a beautiful building.
So honestly, sometimes I even have to think like, oh my goodness, is this real? Because actually those are real pictures. I'm just going to hide this. All right. So we hired actually architect to develop this. This is a real thing. Those are our hallways.
And is this the school in New Jersey?
Yes. This is Welsh campus. And this is the architect who actually designed the space. And anybody who wants to actually watch it can go on our website, but I would like to use this for the opportunity actually for us to discuss. So you see all those spaces. You don't see a lot of fencing because basically buildings create that natural divider for students to be inside or outside. So there's a lot of space. The colors have a specific palette that is calming and just like return to nature. This is the pool I was discussing. Those are the students actually engaging in activities. It's a really beautiful building. Our parents appreciate that our students actually can participate in activities in the beautifully designed environment with a lot of natural light. So yes.
Oh, I see you guys have like a occupational therapy gym with swings and.
Our occupational therapy is amazing. And yes, we incorporate occupational therapy in our day-to-day environments. This is actually a student that is working on the app to make purchases. This is Amy. She's, by the way, from England.
Wow.
So, and this is the greenhouse where students actually work. Those are our group homes where students actually come after school. So really, it's a truly amazing experience to be there. I feel I am lucky because Bancroft has a lot of amazing people who, despite the fact that the work is truly challenging, they want to be there and they want to support our individuals. It's really amazing.
Yeah, this is a very beautiful facility. It looks like there's a lot of outside spaces like this playground and then inside too. And I assume there's like private speech therapy rooms?
Yes, so interestingly, we do have a lot of, so actually you just saw that every classroom is designed that has 2 pull-out rooms or 2 therapy rooms. In addition to a special area just for a teacher and staff. And that's in addition to actual speech therapy rooms that are outside of every classroom.
Oh, so if a therapist wanted, they could just take them right like within their classroom and not actually pull them into their own office.
So you're right. And actually what is interesting, a lot of time we offer not individual therapy sessions on one-to-one, but many times we try to integrate services into students' environment. So let's say if the teacher has a cooking lesson, then speech therapist or occupational therapist would collaborate with them, and they would work together on opening Tupperware or describing verbs that the student sees, or sometimes just positional prepositions, which is such a hard concept to teach that probably is not even
Yeah.
possible, as research shows. So basically, just showing that the ball is on the table, the flour is in the cupboard, stuff like that. Oh,
Definitely. Those are,
yeah, we do have also teaching kitchens, because of course it's part of the experience of students to basically be taught those basic living skills.
mhm. Very nice. I want to go see it.
You should come.
I actually, this kind of leads me to my next question. What exactly is your role? I know you're a special educator, but what does your typical day look like at work, or what specific things do you do there?
So super busy. So I'm a teacher lead, and it's kind of a Bancroft jargon, because I'm not sure this kind of role is in this context anywhere else. So our school, the campus that you just saw, which is one of the schools that Bancroft has, we have 44 classrooms and 44 teachers. And as a teacher lead, I support about 1/4 of those teachers, in terms of choosing which kind of assessment they could be using for individual students, or helping with individual IEP goals, or helping to problem solve, if there is an issue with specific student doing one specific thing. Can we figure out a different way to do it so the student would be more successful?
But you have your own classroom as well, or so you just oversee teachers and kind of mentor and guide them.
You are so right. Although first half of my career at Bancroft, I used to have my own classroom. I enjoyed every minute of it. So now I'm doing just that, but helping more classrooms.
Yeah. No, I understand that eventually it's kind of nice to take a different perspective within the same field, still working with the same students, but in a different way.
And honestly, if we have any special educators among the listeners and viewers right now, but I can say that everything I learned was from other colleagues. So guys, if you're just about to deciding if you want to be a special educator or any educator at all, just observe other classrooms, because that's the best teaching experience for you.
Yeah, definitely. When I was in grad school, we had our classes, and then we also had our clinical rotations where we would work and just observe a speech therapist all day. And that's definitely where I learned most of what I do today, just through observation. Yeah. What does a speech therapist's typical day at work look like at the school? Are they pulling all kids out all day? Do they kind of stay in classrooms? Are they based on age? Kind of like one speech therapist services a certain age group, or how does that look?
So our speech department is actually very complex, and they do a lot of cool things. A typical day for a speech therapist, they would have a mix of individual sessions where they pull individual students out, which means they have individual goals. And it's going to be a mixture of this kind of pull-outs, but also a push in or supporting the classroom. So I just mentioned if a teacher has a science lesson where they are going to be measuring quantities, and they would do it in the teaching kitchen, then the speech therapist would support the specific student with words that would describe the environment. Sometimes actually we have our speech therapists to go to vocational jobs with our students to kind of support them in that environment. Like let's say most recently we had a student who is going to a butterfly press, and it's a space for us where students learn how to work in the environment like Office Depot. So we have our own laminating service, our own binding book service. Um, so the speech therapist would go there with a student and would help them to actually figure out on AAC device that, oh, I just walked into my office. I have to find a button that says, where are the scissors? Or where is the button, the power button for this machine or that machine?
Wow.
And then speech therapists, of course, they participate in our classroom clinics. That's back to the question you asked me at the beginning. If we collaborate, we do a lot. So usually we do have those collaborative meetings where we problem solve or just try to figure out how we can do things better. So they would be super active participants of those meetings. Sometimes they come up with new ideas, what we can do. For example, we're using Xbox 360 for students to enhance their social skills. So speech therapists would add the button, I want Xbox 360 on their AAC device. So the student can actually request what he wants.
Great. So they can learn their skills and then directly apply them with the same people, which is great carryover.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I've asked a lot of questions. I have how is the parent involvement at Bancroft, and how involved do you guys keep the parents? Can they come and observe? Do you host meetings?
So yes, we always try to make sure that our parents are super involved, and some parents have different approach to collaboration. Some parents prefer to come in and be super engaged. Some prefer to be more involved through different modes of communication. Sometimes the distance is an issue because some of our parents don't live in the area, but they're from different states, sometimes farther. So yes, definitely. But for example, I know that it's one of our strategic initiatives for the whole Bancroft to concentrate on development of the student as a whole and providing services not only to the student but also the family as a whole. And sometimes that could be in terms of simple encouragement, sometimes visitations, sometimes it's support through training. We've done that and it has been highly requested. So we have any parents who are listening and watching us right now, don't hesitate to reach out, because literally every special educator, every speech therapist, every professional, we're here for you to support you and your journey with your amazing students.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, it makes our job easier, and it helps us do our job better when we can have a direct line of communication, and if there's any questions, it helps everybody involved if they're addressed right away. And that is what we're here for.
Yeah, actually, I have a good example where a student was learning how to write three-digit number, because that was the number of the apartment where the parents lived, and mom wanted him to actually learn those three digits. Student didn't have one-to-one correspondence and was not able to communicate. Basically, was able to count up to 5. But still, it made sense for the student to learn a three-digit number because that's what family requested. So that goes to your question, because literally we create learning environment for the student together with family. And if it's crucial for family, for the student to learn a three-digit number, because they have their reasons, we are happy to honor that. And it should be always like this. We need to learn. We need to teach the student what he or she needs for her or his specific environment.
Yeah, I agree. It's very important.
Did you have any experience with any of those like out of ordinary requests from parents, just to like encourage?
Definitely, yes. I have to think of a specific situation. Hmm.
I know because many
Years
times,
ago.
yeah, tell me. Yeah.
Well, if I think of it, I'll say it. But I definitely have had parents ask for specific requests, or sometimes I remember like they themselves would put vocabulary words into the device,
Yes.
and the student would come the next day, and I'd notice like this new word was added. But I've had some students specific to their culture, like some of the food that they eat, or if there's like a specific religion or faith, to have a symbol of that where they go to pray. Um,
Yeah, yeah.
so like cultural requests I've had, which is extremely important to.
So we do have that a lot, cultural and religious requests, which is super interesting because it just creates additional opportunity for us to teach students in natural environment that we all are different and it's okay. It should be that way.
Yeah,
So basically, students without even knowing are giving us opportunity to teach inclusiveness and just the fact that we're different, all of us.
which is hard to teach through an AAC device if you think about it concretely.
Yeah, absolutely, yes.
Well, I think I've asked you all of my specific questions for you. I've asked you a lot. I feel like I've
Yes.
asked so many different random questions. So thank you for answering all of them so thoroughly and for talking about such a. There's so many interesting things I definitely learned um, happening, and this place seems like a great place to work to go. It sounds like a great place to go for the specific needs.
Mhm.
Um, is there anything else that you wanted to mention or something that we didn't discuss? Or if you have any questions for me about anything?
Yes, actually, I have a same question for you. How did you get into this field?
So I'm an only child, and I grew up in Boston, and I always wanted to have siblings and just be around kids. So I think as I got older and I grew up going to summer camp, I decided that I wanted to work with kids and be around kids. And I just decided I would be a teacher. And my mom was kind of pushing me to be something more specific, pushing me to do something not as general. Although I think being a teacher is a great career, but my mother at the time was like, I think you can do more. You should do something else. So I worked with a college career advisor, and she recommended speech therapy. And I was a senior in high school, and I said, that sounds great. And then I went to college and I started to take all of the courses, and I was very interested and fell in love with the job, the whole, speech therapy world. And luckily, it was a good recommendation because I didn't change my mind. And ever since, I've worked in many different kind of environments with speech therapy, but I've also worked with kids in summer camps, and youth that have like behavioral disorders and that. So I feel like I'm also still very early on in my career. I've only worked as a speech therapist for five years, so I'm excited to grow myself. I'm still learning, and to kind of find the place where I will work for a long period of time. I've kind of worked in an elementary school, in a high school, in a private practice, and tried many different places to work. And I've definitely narrowed down where I don't want to work. And I'm excited to see where I end up and to kind of settle down in a field and expand my knowledge in something specific.
That sounds super interesting. Actually, I'm glad that you're mentioning that. So I don't think I mentioned that part of my research interests is also evidence-based practices in special education, and actually, it's part of my dissertation at the University of Maryland, Notre Dame University of Maryland, where I'm just about to hopefully complete my PhD. But honestly, to concentrate on things that work for our students is just best way to move forward. So I'm really keen advocate of speech therapy because I know that it helps our students to just express themselves and just be themselves and just be happy. I mean, that's what we want for them.
Yeah, it's definitely a very fulfilling job. I notice with some of my friends that I've grown up with that work
Yeah.
in, I don't know, accounting, or they're software engineer and they're kind of in an office on a computer. I definitely feel like my day to day working, interacting with students, seeing them literally learn things in front of your eyes, and then seeing them maintain those skills over the weeks, and then seeing them the next year and how much they've grown. So that's very rewarding
Yeah.
part of our job, which that's why I can't see myself doing anything else.
Yeah. So, how do you feel when a speech intervention should start in early intervention? Like when the parents should inquire about speech therapy? How soon?
Well, I think that if they, when a child is around a year and a half, I think they should be monitoring, not too closely, not to, get over paranoid about small, difference of small, like weeks or something. But I think that parents should be educated in monitoring their kid as they develop. Like making eye contact and waving and the babbling, like those very big speech. I'm thinking just about the speech milestones. Obviously, there's the physical ones and other important reflexes and stuff. And I think that it's always best if there's um, even a small, my child still isn't responding to their name, or my child still isn't, they're not babbling, or I don't see that they're engaging in symbolic play, whatever stage they're at. I think it's important for the parents to speak to, I mean, if they don't have access to a speech therapist, they would probably go to their pediatrician, and then the pediatrician could refer them to a speech therapist. But it's definitely important to monitor early, as soon as those milestones begin, as early as 9 months, and just kind of be aware as they grow.
Yeah.
And of course, every child develops differently. There might be a kid that starts babbling or talking earlier or late, a little bit later, or they're walking a little bit earlier or later. But it's still best to ask and say, hey, to your doctor or to your therapist if you have one, like express the concerns early. And at the end of the day, getting a few speech therapy tips or at home exercises will never hurt.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah, you can't do any harm by doing early intervention. It'll only kind of, if it wasn't needed at the end of the day, it'll only make the child more prepared
Yeah.
for what they're going
Absolutely.
to. Yeah.
That's very true.
Yeah, no, early intervention is super important. It's hard though. As a speech therapist, it's a hard kind of field to work in because it's mostly home therapy. And from my personal experience, it can get a little unstructured, and it's harder to provide home therapy than in a school setting or in an office, like a private practice setting. That's
Yeah.
just my personal.
Yeah, that's very true.
I just know that like some of my friends and colleagues from grad school were deterred from doing early intervention because of that, which is unfortunate because it's so important. But
Honestly, you're right. And usually, when we get students into the school setting, you can tell if the student received services before he or she came to school or not.
Yeah.
Literally, like you can tell, and it's always
Yeah.
to do more. Honestly, like I feel even for parents, just to be informed, just to know, is it's already so fruitful, because then a parent can make an informed decision. Like it's not anymore just because somebody said something. It's because I know already so much about this whole field, so I can make an informed decision. So
Yeah, and I think it's scary for parents because they're so little and it's so, right, like the, kind of the idea that there's something their child is different or
mhm.
there's something wrong with their child. I don't know the statistics, maybe you do, but I think that the outcomes of early intervention are so successful that most of the
Yeah.
children, or a lot of the children that receive those services, end up catching up and being on grade level going through the rest of their life,
Oh,
because they
yeah.
were given those skills early on.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And honestly, like even when a child grows with any disabilities, really, like there's nobody's going to tell parents like this is the trajectory that you're going to go and this is it. Like, usually there's if services are provided early on, if everything is being followed through the way the program is developed, usually the outcomes are phenomenal.
Hmm. Agreed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Do you have any other questions for me?
Yeah. So let's see. So after the pandemic,
Oh,
yes, when we were receiving our students back to school, how was your experience with the transition back to school?
that's a great question. Actually, that was so I went to grad school from 2015 to 2017 at Northeastern University in Boston. And then I lived abroad. And then I came back in September of 2020. And as a speech therapist, you need to do a 9-month fellowship before you can be a licensed speech therapist and work independently. So it's basically 9 months where you're working just as a speech therapist would, but you have a supervisor that observes you 25% of the time. So
Mhm.
mostly independent, but still kind of have somebody that's monitoring you and signing off on all of your reports. So I began my fellowship in September of 2020, right as the students were just coming back after the pandemic. So they were all coming back, and I was also starting my career for the first time. And I remember they had us wear like a mask,
Yeah,
a
yeah.
face guard, gloves to do an evaluation. And I remember just the students also had to wear the masks, and I had kindergartners at that time, and they did not want to wear them. Which getting them to keep them on was just one thing to manage, but it was also very difficult to assess their articulation because of the mask. So I always had the kids. We had these clear barriers. So I always had the students take off their masks during the evaluation because um, otherwise we wouldn't really be able to fully assess their articulation without seeing
Yeah.
their mouth. But it was very tough. And then I had half of the students on Zoom, and that was kind of my first exposure to speech therapy. And it was like, we didn't learn about how to do Zoom sessions in grad school. Like, I have all these games and toys that I want to play
Yeah.
with. Now I have to find online activities and boom cards, and
Yeah.
it pretty much had to reteach yourself and like create a whole new set of materials to use. So it was tough. But I think the students were more appreciative once they were fully back in school.
Yeah. Oh my goodness, I completely agree with you. Actually, I remember when we were doing online learning, it was challenging. But one thing I never thought I would be thinking of is we were able to be part of family dynamics because literally, like you had uncle running
Oh
directly
yeah.
behind you and neighbors screaming on the other side, and the baby didn't get yet
The
lunch.
sibling throwing a toy.
Yes, or sometimes the student would be sitting on the Zoom and mom would just come in and like the student would show her like you have to press this button. Can you press this button, please? So it was like interesting because that was like an additional dimension of knowing our students. Like we were able to
Definitely.
see their daily lives and
Sometimes,
see sometimes.
yeah, sometimes a little too much, I think.
Yes, definitely. We
Yeah,
despite the distance, we literally grew a little closer to each other. We knew a
yeah.
lot of things about each other.
So did Bancroft go fully virtual once the pandemic
Yeah.
started?
Oh yeah.
And I assume you have summer services.
Yes.
So
Yes,
you
absolutely.
summer through the summer it was all online. And when did you guys return back to the school?
Honestly, I don't remember the dates, but it was kind of like organic with the rest of the schools.
Hmm.
Many of our students they have siblings, so basically to keep that dynamics, we kind of try to coordinate with the schools in the area as well. Um,
Mm,
so yeah, it was approximately the same time like with everybody else. But interestingly, like really, it was interesting to see the students coming back because some of them came back like nothing happened. Some students experienced severe regression in their skill
yeah.
acquisition, but not all of them. This is what's interesting about the whole system. And actually, I'm not sure if you know, and I'm not sure if this is in other state, but in New Jersey, legislators passed the law that we could extend the graduation year. So we do have even now students who are
Oh,
with us, although they're 22 years old, because the law allows them to do that because of pandemic. So we would go through
mhm.
assessment through the meeting with the whole clinical team and external parties and parents, and we would determine that the student would benefit from additional year at Bancroft. We have them here a little longer.
Nice. Yeah, I remember the IEP meetings were all on Zoom, obviously. But then once the students came back, we continued to do the meetings on Zoom because we found that that was a much easier and better way for everybody to meet. Also, so that was
So
kind of a positive thing that came out.
you're right. But honestly, we do have some parents that request IB meetings in person.
Of course, yeah.
Small amount. So we do accommodate that because for some parents it's just easier.
Hmm.
Sometimes they pair it up with a visit of the classroom. So yeah.
I have a funny one of the most like crazy speech therapy stories is related to the pandemic. I had a little kindergartner um, who wore a mask every day, and later we found out that she just liked it because it was pink, and she was 5. She didn't actually understand what COVID was, but she loved wearing her mask. And I was working on articulation with her. She had many different articulation errors. And I worked with her for a few months, and I would ask her if she was ever comfortable taking off her mask, and she always said, "No, I like it. I'm going to keep it on." So I never pushed because I was still able to help her with it on. But a few months into and she was having a really hard time saying S, her S sound. And a few months in, I saw her with her mask off, and I saw that she had a very significant underbite,
Mm-hmm.
which I had no idea. I would have had no idea because her mouth was covered. Her parents didn't think to mention that to her teacher. And that totally was an aha moment because that's exactly why she wasn't able to pronounce her S. And a lot of the other articulation errors were because of her underbite. So it was just kind of a funny, interesting story when once I realized that it was a actually a physical issue. Why was I bothering working on the S sound? Because
Yeah.
it was a matter of she had to get braces in a few years, and we would have to wait until they changed like the structure. Um, so, an interesting example of how the post-COVID students and how it could affect your therapy and also
Yeah.
just kids. A lot of kids, I think, we're using wearing masks for other reasons.
Yes,
Um,
absolutely. Wow, that's
'Cause
interesting, really. Like you probably would never discover that under
no,
circumstances.
no. Well, I really learned to appreciate the importance of when you're communicating and seeing each other's faces and mouths, like teeth, smile, facial expression. Really important working with students on the autism spectrum. We need to see each other's faces and how someone reacts is important to understand. And yeah,
So it's interesting that you're saying it, and it's because you're a speech therapist, so that's your field. From my
right.
perspective as a behavior analyst, I have a similar story, but on behavioral side. So a student, we would take him to his job. Um, he had a vocational job to go to a specific place, complete the task, and come back. And he would get quite aggressive every time when he was there. We could not figure out what it was. So after a while, when we figured that maybe let's just find him a different job, we were thinking, well, let's use this as an opportunity. What would we do in normal environment um, if we wouldn't like a job? We would resign, right? So we made him. He's by the way nonverbal. He's not able to write, but we were able to use his name stamp to put it on a piece of paper. Underneath, the teacher wrote the word job, and the student wrote hand over hand the word no. So basically, he wrote down a resignation letter. He,
Uh-huh.
he handed it to his teacher, and eventually found him a different job in greenhouse, by the way, that he really loves. But what an excellent opportunity to be, like you say, to be really fine-tuned to our students' responses, because it's sometimes it's his palate and facial expression. Sometimes it's his behavioral expression that is
Yeah.
telling us something. Like there's always something they're trying to tell us. We just have to figure out what it is. So like your student was trying to uh, was not able to communicate, and you figured out what that was.
Right.
This student was able to communicate with his actually aggressive behavior, telling us something that actually was happening. And it was a good example because, first of all, we were able to show the student, like, if you don't like something, there's other way to express that than punching
Hmm.
somebody in the face, write a resignation letter. But
Right.
at the same time, like it's help us also for him to experience the autonomy. Like I have control over my environment. I cannot emphasize this enough, but many times for our kids is just demands and requests and stay here and do that, and we don't give them that many opportunities to actually have control over the environment. And I feel like as educators, we're truly we should be committed to create space that students would be able to control some portion of that environment, no matter what that means.
Yeah, and yeah, there's whenever there's a behavior, negative behavior and aggressive behavior, there's always a reason why. It's a form of communication
Yeah, absolutely.
itself.
You're right.
Yeah, very interesting.
We covered a lot today.
Yeah, I think like the evaluation stages, early
Mhm.
intervention, what the school life looks like with speech therapy and special education, behavior therapy, and then talked about the vocational schools, the severe program that you guys are developing, the watch or like the
Haptic device,
device,
absolutely, yes. Mm-hmm.
which I'm very excited to use. And then I got to learn about your background. I talked about mine. Definitely, I learned a lot.
Oh, wait, I have one more idea. So I'm not sure who exactly is our audience, but when there are young people out there, or even people who are trying to change their career, one of the good things that has been proven is to become a paraprofessional or one-to-one, because
Mhm.
usually it's a position, it's like a good position for people to discover what else is out there, because then they can be exposed to other behavior analysts, other speech therapists, and just see like if a specific career path would be for them.
Yeah, that's a great experience. There was always like a graduate student or a young young post high school student working as a paraprofessional, and I would always talk to them. Hey, if you ever have any questions about speech therapy, I'm happy to help. I think it's important to help each other and kind of give back. Like we are now in our positions, and we need more educators and more people to continue to become special educators and speech therapists and physical therapists. So we definitely need to help each other out in that process. And everybody needs a mentor or somebody that they can ask questions and seek guidance from. So
Yes. Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, it's a great field that I think we've just us having this conversation, we've shown why it's a good field.
Yes, absolutely. And I really hope that we even covered a lot of questions that people would have in general, and they're just not asking, because
Yeah,
there's
I have the page open and I don't see any comments. But maybe if we get any later on, I can send them to you if they're specific to Bancroft.
yeah, absolutely.
Well, it was very interesting and informative talking to you and meeting you tonight. I hope we stay in touch, and I want to kind of learn and hear more about the school in the future. Thank you again for giving us your time and for talking. And good luck with your PhD.
Thank you. I'll need
And yeah, have a wonderful evening and a happy new year.
it. Happy New Year. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you, ladies. It was very interesting. Thank you, Katarina. Thank you, Yudit. Very interesting. I learned a lot about you, Yudit. I didn't know that your career path, and I learned a lot about Katarina. Thank you. I hope it was very useful to our listeners as well. And I'll see you guys later. Have a good night.
Andre, there weren't any comments, right?
No, I didn't see any comments.
Okay. 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 Have a good night. Thank you.
Thank you, Judith. Thank you, Andre.
Bye-bye.
Bye.